begin, I have brought a couple of videos that I want you to see it, to watch it, and talks about 3 important characters in Middle Ages in Europe. The first one is William Shakespeare. The second one is Mr. Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, the author of Don Quixote de la Mancha. And the other one is another character that maybe you haven't heard about this guy, but this guy was very important in history. His name was Desiderius Erasmus. He was the one who not wrote, but he published the Second Testament, okay? El primer testamento, acuérdense que hay 2 testamentos, el Antiguo y el Nuevo Testamento. So this guy is the one who he published the Second Testament. I remember in those times, there were some people from the church that they didn't agree the way clergy in church were running things. So they tried to apart, and they mentioned a reforma, querían hacer una reforma in the church. ¿Ya? Entonces, en el capítulo siguiente vamos a ver en qué consistió esa reforma. En aquel entonces fue que se apartaron y se formaron entonces la iglesia protestantes. ¿Ya? La iglesia protestantes, que ustedes habrán escuchado. ¿Ya? Okay, so let's watch this video. Let's begin with, let's begin with this guy, okay? Desiderius, okay?
Desiderius Erasmus. He was a theologian. He was born in Rotterdam or Gouda, Burgundy, Netherlands in the Holy Roman Empire on 28 October 1466. His father's name was Roger Gerard, and mother's name was Margaretha Rogerius. His father was a priest. His parents were not legally married. He attended school at the age of 4. By 9 was enrolled in the most prestigious Latin grammar school. His academic career was abruptly cut short after a plague epidemic killed both his parents in 1483. Following their death, he was put under the care of his guardians who were adamant about him becoming a monk. Impoverished state of being forced him to take up a monastery life in 1492. He became a canon regular at the canonry of Stein. By the age of 25, was ordained as the Catholic priest. He appointed as the secretary to Henry of Bergen in 1493. Bishop Henry was so impressed by his Latin skills that he rewarded Erasmus by sending him to Paris to study classical literature. In 1495, Erasmus traveled to Paris, where he was first introduced to Renaissance humanism. He studied in the Collège de Montaigu, a center of reforming zeal, at the University of Paris. In Paris, Erasmus engaged much of his time writing poetry, experimenting with educational writing, and moving in scholastic circles. One of his pupils, William Blount, arranged a stipend for Erasmus, which allowed him to correspond with some of the most brilliant thinkers of Europe during his travels from city to city. In 1499, Blount offered Erasmus to travel to England. In England, he befriended the most skilled and proficient leaders who had a compelling influence on him. He developed an interest in religious studies and soon turned to Greek language as the key for his research. In 1503, he came up with his handbook, Enchiridion Militis Christiani. In 1506, he traveled to Italy, where he anonymously published his work, Julius Exclusius. In 1506, he graduated with a doctorate in divinity from Turin University. Temporarily, he worked as a proofreader for Aldus Manutius's publishing house in Venice. Erasmus first discovered Lorenzo Valla's New Testament notes in 1506. In 1509, he penned Morii Encomium, the Praise of Folly. From 1510 to 1515, he served as Lady Margaret's Professor of Divinity at the University of Cambridge. Though not formally released from monastic vows until 1517, Erasmus' mounting reputation freed him of Stein. In 1516, Erasmus came up with a heavily explained edition of the New Testament through Novum Instrumentum Omne. In 1517, he supported the foundation of the Collegium Trilingue, that was based on the study of 3 languages, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. In 1519, he came up with a second edition of the New Testament, which was known as Novum Testamentum. The second edition was used by Martin Luther for his German translation of the Bible. The first and second edition together sold 3,300 copies. Due to his sympathetic disposition towards Protestant reforming instincts, he was accused of being a Lutheran. While at Canonry of Stein, Erasmus first fell in love with Servatius Rogerus, fellow canon. Erasmus's health gave way in 1536. Due to his failing health, he accepted an invitation by Queen Mary of Hungary, Regent of Netherlands, to move from Freiburg to Brabant. He died in Basel, Old Swiss Confederacy in the Holy Roman Empire, on 12 July 1536, at the age of 69. In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, said Desiderius Erasmus.
Okay, now let's watch this, the other one. Okay, now I don't know if you have heard of you have heard this saying.
In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
En español sería, en el reino de los ciegos, el tuerto es el rey. ¿Y quién lo dijo? Lo dijo, dice Desiderius Erasmus. Ya, de repente si lo escuchan por ahí. Ok, vamos a ver ahora the life about Miguel de Cervantes.
En algún lugar de Alcalá de Henares, un pueblo cercano a Madrid, no ha mucho tiempo que nació Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, concretamente en 1547. Era el cuarto hijo de un humilde cirujano llamado Rodrigo y de su esposa Leonor. Muchos datos de la azarosa biografía de Cervantes son inciertos. Se sabe que a los 4 años se traslada con su familia a Valladolid, por entonces capital de la España de Felipe II. Años más tarde la corte se traslada a Madrid y la familia Cervantes también. En estos años se aficiona a la escritura y a las obras de teatro de Lope de Rueda. Escribe algunos poemas. Se dice que por herir a alguien en una justa es desterrado y marcha a Italia, donde conoce sus ciudades, su arte y cultura. A los 24 años participa en la batalla de Lepanto, donde un ejército cristiano llamado la Liga Santa combate al Imperio Otomano con victoria final de los cristianos. En batalla le hieren una mano de la que nunca se curó, por lo que le apodaron el Manco de Lepanto. Aunque contrario a lo que mucha gente cree, la mano nunca le fue amputada. Es más, reanudó su vida militar. Tras recibir varias cartas de recomendación por sus servicios militares, una de Juan de Austria, decide volver a España para obtener su recompensa. Al alcanzar las costas de Cataluña, la galera en la que viajaba es asaltada por corsarios berberiscos que se piensan que Cervantes es un tipo muy importante, por las cartas de recomendación que llevaba consigo. Le apresaron y estuvo cautivo en Argel durante unos cuantos años. Pedían por él un rescate desorbitado que sus familiares no podían afrontar. Tras liberarse, marcha a Denia y Valencia y más tarde se regresa a Madrid. Se emplea en toda clase de oficios. Viaja a Lisboa y luego a Orán como espía del rey Felipe II. En esta época contrae matrimonio con la joven Catalina de Salazar. Justo antes había tenido una relación amorosa con la esposa de un tabernero, de la que nació una niña. El matrimonio con Catalina de Salazar no funciona y se acaban separando. No tuvieron hijos. A Cervantes lo destinan a Sevilla como comisario real de abastos para la empresa de la Armada Invencible y recorre Andalucía recolectando impuestos para la corona. Se ganó en esta época muchos enemigos y lo arrojan a la cárcel. Supuestamente Cervantes se había apropiado de dinero público. Cervantes se dedica a escribir. Entre otras obras concibe en prisión su gran obra maestra, la primera parte del ingenioso hidalgo Don Quijote de la Mancha. Después, siguiendo la corte, se traslada a Valladolid, donde termina la obra. Cuenta con casi 58 años cuando por fin se publica. Se publica en Madrid y el éxito fue inmediato. En el año 1605 se publicaron ya 6 ediciones más y muchos ejemplares se enviaron a las Indias. Nunca hasta entonces se había dado un caso semejante. Pronto se tradujo a otros idiomas. Después de la Biblia, no hay otro libro en el mundo tantas veces editado, traducido y comentado. Cervantes fallece en Madrid a la edad de 68 años de diabetes, en la conocida Casa de Cervantes en el barrio de las Letras. Deseó ser enterrado en la iglesia del convento de las Trinitarias Descalzas en el mismo barrio. Falleció el 22 de abril del año 1616, año en el que también fallece otro gran...
Well, I mean, but it's fine. I didn't know that I heard that they used to be called El Manco de Lepanto. Now I know why he was called El Manco de Lepanto, but he never lose his hand. So I thought he lose his hand, but no, he never lose his hand. Okay, now let's begin and let's continue what we started yesterday. Where were we? Where were we? Here. Another Renaissance. Now remember, this topic is about how the Renaissance was expand through whole history. And now we just heard about the Erastus, and the other one is the famous artist is the Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, and the last one is Mr. William Shakespeare. Okay, let's see if we have enough time to play those videos. Okay, now let's begin now. Another Renaissance. The main idea of the Renaissance and the Northern Renaissance differ from those of Italian Renaissance. So there is a difference between, they try to make their own Renaissance in Northern Europe. Okay, they didn't try to copy the same way of thinking or the same way they were doing the arts in Italy. Okay, they tried to do something on his own. As the humanism spread, scholars or estudiosos in Northern Europe became more interested in history. Northern scholars, however, focused not on Greek and Rome, but on history of Christianity. The result was Christian humanism. In Italian was the humanism, and then they mixed both the Christian and the humanism here in Europe. Many Northern scholars felt that the church was corrupt, definitely, and no longer true to the spirit of Jesus' teachings anymore. They began to call for church reform. Now, esta reforma de la iglesia se toca en el capítulo siguiente, the next chapter that we're going to study next week. Okay, on next class, the second class of the next week. Now, Northern scholars, this is an example, and we just watched the video about Desiderius Erasmus. A Dutch priest, if era un priest, named Desiderius Erasmus, was the most important of these scholars. Erasmus believed in the idea that humans had free will, que significa will. Free will significa libre albedrío. Okay? Libre albedrío, tú puedes hacer lo que tú quieras. Simplemente atenta a las consecuencias. They could choose the path in their lives that would lead them to salvation when they die. In 1509, Erasmus published a book, The Praise of Folly, in which he criticized corrupt clergy. Critica a la iglesia. He also wanted to get rid of some church rituals that he considered meaningless. Se quería hacer de rituales que no tenían significado, según él. Northern Europeans also changed some Renaissance ideas about art. For one thing, humans in Northern painting don't look like Greek gods. Esa es la primera diferencia. No parecía como lo hacían parecer acá en la Italia. Ejemplo, el Miguel Ángel, ¿se acuerdan que hizo el David? Bueno, así que se veía bien definido todos sus músculos. Instead, he are realistic with physical flaws, era más realística con debilidades físicas. plus con las debilidades que uno tiene. O imperfecciones, ¿verdad? Imperfecciones que uno tiene. Biblical scenes and classical myth were the traditional subject of Italian Renaissance art. Ese era el tópico en la Italia renacentista. In contrast, northern artists painted scenes of daily life, escenas de la vida diaria. For example, consider the painting of hunter returning home. Muchas de las obras de arte que ustedes ven, donde se promueve actividades de la vida diaria, son del renacentismo, pero del norte de Europa. Okay? Albrecht Dürer was a famous northern artist from Germany. Was a famous artist. Like Italian artist, Dürer studied anatomy so he could paint people more realistically. Like his fellow northern, Dürer showed objects in great details. Now, Dürer created religious painting for churches, but the most famous of his prints. A print is a work of, esto es un print, de esta manera son los prints, dice, print is a work of art produced from an original. First, Dürer carved the image into either a metal sheet or a wooden block. Y así forma esto que le llaman prints. Let's move on. Literary beyond Italy. Now let's talk about Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, el Manco de Lepanto, writer in other countries besides Italy also include Renaissance ideas in their works. Many were inspired by how different life had become since the Middle Ages. In Spain, Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra wrote Don Quixote. In this book, written in Spanish, Cervantes poked fun, se burlaba de los cuentos románticos of the Middle Ages, de la Edad Media. His main character is an old man who decided to become a knight. Este es, ¿se acuerdan de él? Que quería convertir en un caballero. A decision that Cervantes mocked, una decisión que Cervantes lo hacía para qué? Para burlarse del amor. Now, let's move on now. And the last artist, a writer, very famous writer, and this is the father of the English, is Mr. William Shakespeare. Readers around the world consider William Shakespeare the greatest writer in English language. Although he also wrote poems, Shakespeare is most famous for his plays. Shakespeare wrote more than 30 comedies, tragedies, histories. London audience of the latest 1500 or early 1600 packed the theater to see them. Over here, there are some examples of their books. He wrote Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Othello, Macbeth again, and the last one, Hamlet. Those are very interesting and important in history. Now, I want you to watch the last video that talks about Mr. William Shakespeare. Let's watch something about William Shakespeare. Insult Shakespeare. William Shakespeare. Yes, let's watch.
William Shakespeare, one of the greatest authors of all time, was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. His actual birth date is uncertain, but most scholars believe he was born on or near April 23, 1564.
We think he may have been educated in the King's School at Stratford because that would have been typical for a child with a father who was an alderman. What we do know is that he didn't go to university.
We have a marriage record for Shakespeare to Anne Hathaway in 1585. We also have baptism records for a daughter and a set of twins. And we also know that his son, Hamnet, one of the twins, died.
Shakespeare moved to London in the late 1580s. By the early 1590s, we know he's writing, and we know that he's acting.
By 1597, Shakespeare had authored 15 of the 37 plays attributed to him, including Romeo and Juliet, Comedy of Errors, and The Merry Wives of Windsor.
People think of William Shakespeare as an artist, a playwright. He was a pretty good businessman.
In 1599, he built the largest open-air amphitheater in London, the Globe Theatre.
He was an entrepreneur. He knew his market. He knew how to cater to that market. He made shrewd real estate investments.
Shakespeare's company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, changed its name to the King's Men when King James became its patron in 1603. This was a mark of exceptional prestige.
The different types of Shakespeare plays, they're separated into histories, comedies, tragedies, and then later on tragicomedies.
Shakespeare's phrases, the ways he used words, are so common that people often get mixed up and can't remember if they came from the Bible or from Shakespeare. My grandmother used to say, when something bad happened, that these were the slings and arrows of everyday life. She was not an educated woman, and she didn't go to Shakespeare plays. She didn't get that one from the Bible.
What scholars call Shakespeare's middle period, from 1595 to 1605, included such classic comedies as Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, and Much Ado About Nothing. He also produced Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth during this period.
Right at the cusp where Shakespeare begins to write Lear, it tips into what we could call the later Shakespeare. And this period produces Lear, Antony and Cleopatra, Tempest, Winter's Tale, Pericles, Cymbeline.
Shakespeare wrote great stories. For example, one of the stories starts with a king who is tired. He doesn't want to govern anymore. So he says to his three daughters, I'm going to separate the kingdom between the three of you, but it's going to be based on who tells me how much they love me. However much you love me, that's how much of the kingdom you're going to get. Now that's going to make me sit up. I mean, what a way to start a story. And that's King Lear.
Shakespeare was not only a playwright, he also was a poet, partly because of economic necessity. During the early 1590s, plague closed the theaters in London, and there was quite a vogue for producing sonnets.
Shakespeare wrote 154 sonnets, in addition to several narrative poems.
Shakespeare worked the English language, milked it for all it was worth, made up words if it didn't give him the right words. He is one of the first professional writers.
The details of William Shakespeare's death remain a mystery, but scholars believe he died on his birthday, April 23, 1616. In the 400 years since, Shakespeare's influence has only grown. His writing is the second most quoted after the Bible. He has been credited with introducing almost 3,000 words to the English language, and a Google search on Shakespeare returns more than 140 million results.
Shakespeare talked about the human condition. He explains to us how we think, how we feel, the human psyche. He eloquently explains it.
In the 18th century, questions arose about the authorship of Shakespeare's work, given the vague details we know of his life, his lack of higher education, and the similarity of his plays to others of the day. Today, most scholars believe Shakespeare wrote all his plays and sonnets.
I would argue that Shakespeare's legacy is the most influential figure in human civilization.
Okie dokie, guys. That's what I have for today. So right now we have finished this chapter, the Renaissance beyond Italy. Now next